Hello and welcome back to another episode of App Stories. I'm John Voorhees, and I have Federico Viticci with me. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm doing all right. We're going to talk today, Federico. We're going to talk about the Notion Nation. We have joined the ranks, the rank and file of the Notion Nation, and I think it's been pretty good for us overall, but I think you and I are using it kind of differently. So I thought maybe if we talked about it today, we could maybe lay out some of the major things, major approaches we take to it, and what we each find it good for, and maybe even what we don't find it good for, because I feel like, you're doing more, I think, and I would say more of what you're doing is in Notion than
I live
me,
in Notion. Yeah.
Although I'm also using it an awful lot. So it's just a lot in different ways, which I think is hopefully going to be interesting for folks.
Yeah, I'm going to try and be as brief as possible. Otherwise, it's going to be I can talk for like 2 hours about Notion and the things that I do. And there are some things about Notion that I cannot talk about, not to brag, but because I'm a alpha and beta tester for some features.
Ooh.
I know some of the folks at Notion, and I will try my best not to spoil any future plans. But yeah, okay, so first of all, I guess I should say that this was a transition for me last year. I embraced Notion just before WWDC, so in the spring of 2025. So I'm coming up on my...
That long ago, huh? I didn't realize it was that long ago.
Coming up on my first year anniversary of fully embracing Notion. I think it was around March or April, just before WWDC. And yes, I live in Notion to the point where it's my only note-taking app, my only writing environment. I essentially only use drafts on the side as a quick scratch pad for plain text, and also as a way to, and I guess this is one of my first use cases, as a way to fine-tune the very final step of an article that I write in Notion. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But in drafts, as the final step, I export, thanks to the Notion API, I have an action that exports a Notion page from rich text to Markdown. And it's a very custom action with, some markdown rules for Mac stories and that sort of stuff. And so for especially for long articles, I do one final pass in drafts to make sure that the markdown is all correct. But otherwise, I live in Notion for notes, for things that I discover on the web and that I bookmark into Notion, for short articles for Mac stories, long articles for Mac stories, including my iOS and iPadOS review, and just regular articles and reviews. And I guess the central component, I would say there are three core pieces of my Notion setup. Okay. My daily notes, my web clippings, and my content planner for articles. So my daily notes, we talked about daily notes and sort of the practice of daily notes over the past year. I started taking daily notes, I think, in September. So I think it's roughly been like 6 months. And I have kept a relatively simple template for my daily notes. I don't do any fancy like custom template with like database, embedded databases or views. Each day at midnight, a new daily note is auto-generated for me with the current date and just an empty page. And it used to be that this was created with a shortcut and a personal automation. Then these were created with Zapier. And lately, I have consolidated all of my automations, things that happen automatically, without my control. I've consolidated all of them with OpenClaw, which is the new name for CloudBot. So each day at midnight, there's a cron job on my Mac Mini that automatically generates a Notion daily note using the Notion API.
Let me stop you there for 1 second. What if you have something that you want to put in a daily note for a future day? Do you just make it manually in that situation, or do you not do that ever?
I don't, because if I think of something, it means I thought about it today. It's just the daily note idea for me is a place where I can dump all of the ideas that I think about today. If I think about it today, even if it's for the future, what matters is that I thought about it today. And so I guess the most important part is then reviewing the daily notes, because that's the whole point for me. I archive and I process all of my daily notes. They have a done property that I check when I'm done with that daily note. And being done with a daily note means if there are any actionable things that need to be turned into a project or into a task, it means I go in there and I manually create a task for those things. I dabbled with using AI to automatically turn actionable items from my daily notes into tasks, but no, I just want to review it manually. I enjoy the process of sitting down and seeing, okay, I still have 2 open daily notes before today. Why? And I go in there and I see, okay, is this an article idea? Is this a task? Is this something that I can get done now? And so the review process is very important. And I have a variety of tools for appending text or images to my daily note. I talked about the custom web apps that I've built for appending content to my daily note, for viewing and scrolling through my daily notes. I also have some shortcuts, some drafts actions, some Raycast extensions. The idea is that I need to reduce friction as much as possible in a bunch of different places to get data and just any thought into my daily note. Because the concern is reviewing those daily notes later.
I'm not very good at that. I'll admit it right up front. I got to get better at it myself.
Something that I started doing this past week is I turned my OpenClaw setup. I'm going to talk about my OpenClaw setup in AppStories Plus later. But something that I've done is I have made an effort to make OpenClaw more proactive for me. And one of the things that I do, and I'll talk about other things later, but one of the things that I do is 3 times during the day, morning, lunchtime, and afternoon, my OpenClaw creates a proactive idea for me. And those 3 ideas, morning, lunchtime, and afternoon, they go into my daily note as a special orange call out with a lobster icon. The idea being that I let OpenClaw scan my articles on MacStories, my Mastodon feed, and my Blue Sky feed to try and build a snapshot of what I'm thinking about or what I'm saying at the moment. I don't let it scan my email. I don't let it scan my messages. It doesn't have access to those surfaces. But each
just
day,
public stuff, basically.
Just public stuff. Yeah. And each day goes through and it tries to piece those things that it finds about me on the web together with my daily memories in OpenClaw, and it comes up with ideas for me to tackle. And it saves those. And sometimes they're pretty good ideas, and other times are things that I've already done, and other times are bad ideas. And I just tell it, okay, look, this was a bad idea, but it doesn't matter. We'll see the next one. I guess the final thing that I want to mention about my Notion daily notes is that also at the end of each day, before the next daily note gets generated, I also archive, I make a copy of the OpenClaw daily memory. So the OpenClaw daily memories are stored as markdown files in the OpenClaw directory. Right. And that daily memory is like a log of the daily sessions for OpenClaw. The things that I've built, the things that I've asked, discussions that we've had, things that I told OpenClaw to remember. That daily note gets archived just before the day is over as a sub-page in my daily note. So at the bottom,
that makes a lot of sense.
I see a little link with a lobster, and it's the daily memory for OpenClaw for that day. The idea being that, and I'll talk about this in a minute, with Notion AI, the reason why I live in Notion is that I don't want to say that I built a second brain, but I've long been searching for this idea of perfect memory. So the idea of being able to search and reference anything that I think, that I write, or that I clip from the web, or that I take notes about. And everything goes into Notion because then I get to use Notion AI or any connected AI like ChatGPT or Claude to search for stuff in my Notion. Like, oh, I remember that I wrote about this. When was it? And did I? Or I remember I saw something on the web about this. And sure enough, it finds that in my web clippings. So that's why I try to stuff my Notion with as much data as possible, but it gets automatically organized in ways that I will explain in a few minutes.
Right. I think that perfect memory is an interesting concept because I actually just used this the other day. We were talking with our developer about some things we want to do for the website, and the topic came up of optimizing for LLMs, and I knew that I had done some research months and months ago about NL Web, and I didn't remember the name of NL Web, but I remembered it was a Microsoft research project from the summer, and that I had some links about it. And I asked Notion AI to find that for me. It found it immediately, created a little tiny summary, and put all the links at the bottom, and I could just share it just like that without having to do any other work involved, which was good. I mean, I don't use daily notes myself. What I'm using are weekly notes, which are really the same thing, just instead of having 365 notes a year, I have 52. And each one has a little toggle list in it for the days of the week. And I consolidate the weekend, I just consolidate into weekend. And then I have a section at the bottom called My Thoughts, which is just a section that I can look for using a script that's tied to a shortcut that goes to the action button on my iPhone, where I can use WhisperFlow to dictate a note, and then it gets sent to my Mac Studio for processing and adding to that particular section in my Notion weekly note, because it looks for the date and it looks for that particular section, and then drops the dictated text in there. And I use my weekly notes in each of these sections very much like a scratch pad more than anything else. It's like you said, it's to jot down ideas. It's to jot down those quick things that I know I need to do that I haven't done yet in the day, but maybe I'm in the middle of something else. And I usually leave them in there. I will sometimes delete them. Sometimes I'll just do a strike through for certain things. That way I have the information there and I can go find it again if I want to, even though it's something that's finished. But that's about all I do with it. What I don't do enough of, though, is going through and kind of pulling forward the ideas, reviewing the ideas that I jotted down and didn't do anything about in the course of a day or a week, and moving them to another date, or moving them to Todoist, or moving them somewhere else where they ought to live besides in those weekly notes. I need to get a little bit better at that, I think. But that's kind of the process I've been using. It's very loose. Doesn't have any databases in it. Doesn't have any embedded lists, any other embedded pages. It's just me writing things down so I don't forget about them and then do them later.
Nice. My content planner in Notion. Actually, let me open this one now. So
we both have these, and we probably, I don't know, there's got to be some way that we have like a merged view and then a personal view for these things, I think. At least for the stuff that goes up on the website.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Interesting.
There's things about Notion. There's like, I think that's a whole nother topic, is like, what should be shared as part of a team space, and what should be just kept for yourself, and whether that leads to duplication that you should.
I always resist the idea of sharing like tasks and articles in not just with you, but like in any collaborative environment.
Yeah, no,
because
I
this is
understand.
like my sacred space for tasks and ideas. But maybe there are ways to. It would be helpful, I think, to see like an overview of what I'm working on.
Well, what I have that I don't know that you've ever really looked at it, but I have a content calendar that is really just shows what day.
See, the content calendar idea, I understand. But for me, sometimes the creative process is kind of weird, and I don't want to commit to dates unless there's an embargo or something, because I tend to be very obsessive about my work, and sometimes things take longer than I wish. And sometimes things come together, like the Cloudbot article, for example. It was done in 2 days.
Yeah.
And I always, like, a content calendar always makes me feel bad, because my brain is a little unpredictable like that.
That's why I don't put articles in it.
Yeah.
It's not for that. It's for the podcasts and for the club,
Yeah.
because there is a publication date for those things where they have to come out by a particular day, and there's usually a recording day, and then there's a start thinking about it day. There's usually 3 dates involved, and I use that just to see where I can cram the writing in between.
Yeah. Anyway, so in my content planner, it's a board. It's a Kanban board with columns for the Cloud Mac Stories Academy, ideas, linked posts, regular Mac Stories articles, and weekly articles. And I just write them in Notion. I completely write stories in Notion, and I have created advanced actions in drafts to turn specific Notion syntax elements like callouts of blue color or yellow color into specific MacStories syntax elements. So it's like a custom compiler that I've built. I just write everything in Notion, including images. I just upload them to our CDN, and then I paste the link in Notion, and I embed the image. So I get to write in a visual environment, but then I export everything as Markdown. The Notion API really comes in clutch for that, just giving you the ability to do anything you want.
Yeah.
I guess the only interesting the interesting part here is that, once again, I have an OpenClaw integration that when I have a bunch of ideas in the weekly column. Those are things that I want to write for the MacStories weekly newsletter.
Right.
And when there's a button that when I click this button in Notion, it runs a webhook. And that webhook goes to OpenClaw. When OpenClaw receives that authenticated webhook from me, it sees that it's a Notion page. And if it's a Notion page that is in the weekly category and that is marked as in progress and that has a target date, it takes that Notion page and its metadata and it finds the next issue of MacStories Weekly in my Todoist. I have another automation that each weekend creates a new project in Todoist for the next issue for next week of MacStories Weekly. So it takes that Notion page and it puts it into the project in Todoist for the next issue of MacStories Weekly under a section called My Sections for things that I want to write about. And that task is deep linked to Notion. And the Notion page gets updated with a deep link to the Todoist task.
If I did this, I would probably have 100 tasks every single day of the week.
Well, do you write 100 sections for MacStories Weekly?
No, but I mean, if you apply that logic to everything that we do,
I
just have a write for weekly task.
No, I see. That's the thing. I have to be very precise with myself. Like everything. So I was watching High Potential, right? The TV show that I recommended on Unwind. And in one of the episodes, they were describing the different systems that people have to organize stuff. And there was this crime scene where one of the suspects was called a butterfly because butterflies tend to live in their nests, tend to live like everything in the open, but everything in the open makes sense. Whereas I think I'm an ant, or like, no, I'm a bee, I guess, because everything needs to be organized in a very specific place and nothing needs to be scattered around. If you look at my desk now, there's basically nothing on my desk. I have become like this, by the way. I was not like this when I was younger. I have become the kind of person who each day, when I'm done working, I put things back where they belong, in each drawer, in each box. Like everything needs to be sorted out. And that's also what I do. Like I don't have tasks that say write for weekly. I have a task that says write this section for weekly on this day. Otherwise, I will lose my mind.
Well, maybe that's why I'm losing my mind. I don't know. Currently.
So that's why that automation is, it basically runs once a week for just that section. And in the other sections like app debuts and weekly links, those get saved directly in Todoist. But that's beyond the Notion scope.
Sure.
And what else? Do you have anything else from
I do.
Notion?
I mean, I'm doing one thing that I don't think that you're doing that I think has helped me a lot, which is, and you touched on the Notion API, which is very good. It's very complex though, but with the help of something like Claude or OpenAI's ChatGPT, it's very easy to kind of create scripts for yourself. And so what I've done, I've talked a little bit before about how I do MacStories deals, which MacStories deals is something that needs to be highly automated so it doesn't suck up a lot of my time. And so I have scripts that go out and find deals on Amazon and in the TV app. And then they drop all the metadata into Notion, into a very large database. And over time, I've refined it so it has things that I can do. For instance, it drops in there all the URLs, of course. I have little templates for what the deals are, and can just copy those, and it's a starting point. So I have to write less for the social media posts, which is all tied into what is it, Buffer. So I've got Buffer that I'm using as well. But it's really the scripts that are the important thing, because it finds the deals, it ranks the deals, and it tells me things like, is this in our MacStories setups section? So if it is, I can go out and find that and link it. It tells me whether it's something that you've talked about before or I've talked about it before. It's just a lot of information that allows me to very quickly put those together. But the one that I've done most recently, which has helped an enormous amount, was sort of inspired by RSS, because we have at MacStories 13 social media accounts between all the podcasts and the website and the club and everything like that. And we have 2 YouTube channels. So all in, there's like 15 accounts. And the problem with social media is, one, it's the time sink and the doom scrolling that you can get sucked into if you're just going to check for notifications and find something interesting to browse, and all of a sudden you've wasted a half an hour. But there's that aspect of it. And there's just the switching from account to account to account being kind of burdensome. So I created some scripts that crawl those feeds every single, I think it does it every 5 or 10 minutes, and it pulls in replies, and then it ranks the replies. The replies are run through Notion AI, which looks at them, and it will float to the top to highest priority. Things like, you've got a typo in this story, or the MacStories website is down, or why can't I see AppStories in my podcast player? People who have comments and feedback and problems, I see at the top of the list. And then it goes on down from there. There's to the point where the low priority things are usually just people commenting on things. I want to see those things, but I don't need to deal with them right away. So it's like high, medium, low priority. And I found that has worked super well to stay on top of those things in a way that I hadn't before. Because before, I would check my feed, my timeline, a lot, and I would check in on the MacStories one, but I didn't check in on like the podcasts as much. So that has been a big help, to the point where I've also pulled in, as of just this last weekend, I'm pulling back in like Discord, because we have a channel for feedback and issues that people have. And I always see those because I'm on Discord enough to see them, but I see them a lot faster now because those are going directly into that channel. And I may do some more. I may add some more to this. It's just a nice way to create what is effectively an RSS feed, but in a table view of all the ways people often contact us other than email. And it's down to the point where I've got it now working with a deep linking, where I can go in and click when I see one of these and I'm like, oh, I need to respond to this person. I can click on a thing. It'll automatically open up Ivory and give me the message that I need to reply to. I reply to it and I close Ivory. And you know what? That's made my dealing with social media a lot more sane lately.
Nice. I don't do that.
It's there. You can even go look at it if you want. And what I do is I archive them as I deal with them or decide they don't need to be dealt with. I click a checkbox that says archive, and then it just disappears from the filtered view that I have. So all that stuff's in there, but it gets dealt with. I go in there a few times a day and deal with stuff to see what's going on. Especially like when we merged, Club MacStories into the main site, we had a few issues that we had to deal with, and we had people with suggestions and other things. We had a lot of traffic for a few days there, and it was helpful to be able to go in there more regularly than usual and compile those for our developer and to respond to things myself or talk to you about them. So it's that part of it's been really good.
Nice. The final part of my Notion that I will mention is clipping things from the web.
Mm-hmm.
I use the Notion Web Clipper, just the standard extension from desktop browsers or the share sheet on the iPhone and iPad. And
Right.
I just clip a page and that's it. But then I have a Notion agent. So you can now create Notion AI agents in Notion. Unfortunately, this can only be managed on desktop. I really hope that Notion makes them more accessible on mobile devices soon. I have two main Notion agents. One is for MPC show notes, so that I can use it to quickly process like news articles or things that I find and insert them in the MPC show notes page that we have, because we're also using Notion for all of the show notes of our podcasts.
Yeah.
But the main agent that I use that is automatically triggered whenever I add a new item to my Notion web clippings database. The Notion agent, through some integrations that I will talk about in the future, because this feature is not live yet, even though it's been widely reported on multiple blogs. Just use Google to see what I mean. The Notion agent gets the new web page, the new page that has been added to the database, and goes to the original URL, scrapes the URL, extracts the title, the hero image, and the contents of the page. Then uses AI, uses natural language to understand what type of web page it is. And the prompt for the Notion agent tells it that I use specific categories for stuff in my clippings, like AI, Apple News, music, video games, like that kind of thing. So it automatically applies a category, automatically sets a page cover. If it's a music link, it goes to the Apple Music API or the Spotify API, and it gets metadata for the item. And it then creates a summary at the top of the original clipping, so that I get both a summary and the full text of the page that I archived.
Oh, nice.
And basically, it processes all of these things. And when it's done, it sets a property called processed by agent. So it checks it. And this way, I get this beautiful database with all page covers and thumbnail previews of all the things that I clip from the web. But also, that database is what powers my Notion web app that I vibe coded with Claude and Codex over the holidays. So that it's a dedicated web app with a custom grid view for all the things that I clip from the web. And it's a faster way to see those web clippings, because it's an icon on my home screen that launches a progressive web app, instead of having to manually open Notion and navigate to that database. Right. And this thing has been incredible. Just being able to just not having to worry about bookmarking these things, just throw it into Notion. The agent will process it. And especially now that I have all these integrations with this advanced prompt using Opus 4.5 as the model behind the scenes, has been incredible, because later I get to have all these clippings. I can manually go check out these web pages. If it's an album, I'm going to listen to the album. If it's something that I need to purchase on Amazon, I'm going to purchase it on Amazon. And when I'm done with them, I check the done properties, so they're archived. But otherwise, I can use Notion AI search to see, like, hey, what did I clip last week? Like, I think I bookmarked a GitHub repo for, I don't know, some extension that I wanted to try. What was it? And the Notion AI will find it for me. So yeah, that's basically an overview of what we do. And we have some other like shared team things. We have a Notion database with our web developer to keep track of features and bugs for Mac stories. Right. We have the podcast show notes. I also have a separate Notion database with the connected guys for the podcast. But for personal usage, it comes down to these four things: daily notes, content planner, web clippings, and Notion agents.
Yeah, I should mention my web clippings too. It's really, mine is a little bit broader than just web clippings though. I just call them notes. And it's one giant database that collects everything. Like if I'm working on something like a script or something using Claude Code, I will have Claude Code document how everything works and drop it into my notes database. And then I just have a view that's like, here's documentation for things that I've created. So that I use filters and sorting to take what is an enormous, unruly database of notes and skinny it down to just specific categories of things. I also put a lot of websites in there. I put some articles in there. The deep research project that I did, where I built myself a web app that does deep research using Parallel.ai, it will generate a long report and I'll drop it into notes. And that's one of those things that when I go through and review it, I can read it from there, and I can sort things out based on various criteria. I mean, that's been my biggest thing. I also created shortcuts and I have a Safari web extension that works on the iPhone, iPad, Mac, and even the Vision Pro, where I can send things into Notion directly from the toolbar of any of those apps and tag it as it goes in. So it's easier to sort that way as well. It's a little bit like the Notion Clipper. However, instead of clipping actually clipping the same way that Notion does, it allows me to do tagging on the way in too, which is kind of I think a nice way to get a first cut at organizing before any kind of AI or manual process is used. So that's worked out pretty well for me too. I need to finish that web extension, Federico. I think you've got a bad old version that doesn't work super well with the OAuth for Notion. I gotta update that test flight and get it out to you.
Okay. Well, that's a look at our Notion setup. I want to talk some more about my OpenClaw setup.
Yes.
In AppStories Plus. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us for this episode of AppStories, everyone. We will be back in another week with another episode. We're going to expand on we're going to be spending some time talking about apps, I think, over the next several weeks. And join us in the post-show for some more on Federico's OpenClaw setup. You can find the two of us over at macstories.net. And we're on social media. Just look for our names there and you'll find us. Federico is at Fetici everywhere. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHSS. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.